Hi, everyone. Welcome to PASA's listening session, The Circular Success Story, How Philadelphia Restaurants Won the Right to Reuse. We have a real treat for you today. This is a little bit of a departure from our normal topics, which tend to be a little bit more based on farms and farm activities, but we think you'll find this one interesting. We've got a whole panel of experts today representing nonprofits, restaurants, even the Philadelphia Health Department. So we're in for a treat. One of the, as you join us, go ahead and put your name and where you're calling in from in the chat so our panelists know who their audience is. And after their presentation, you'll get an opportunity to ask questions, which you can put in the Q&A, hopefully at the bottom of your screen. And we will get to as many as we can by the end of the hour. So we're going to get started. I'm Sarah Nicholas, the policy specialist with PASA Sustainable Agriculture. We have been doing these listening sessions for about 2 or 3 years now, kind of an artifact of the pandemic, but we find that we can reach a wider audience and lots of interesting topics. This topic came to my attention about a year ago. I started hearing about a group that was doing fantastic work in the city of Philadelphia. And they managed to get a rule change done in a record amount of time, which for any of you who work in policy is almost unheard of. There's a saying that you can't fight City Hall. And I would say in this case, which is attributed to Wyatt Earp of all people, you don't need to fight with City Hall. You can work with them and you can get some great things done. So stick around for our story and for the Q&A. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first panelist, Nick Esposito with Circular Philadelphia.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that great introduction. If Wyatt Earp was alive today, you could be a member of Circular Philadelphia. We take all kinds. So, but we're really excited to be here. Thank you so much. Been a long time collaborator and worker with PASA. And see some great other organizations on the call here too, some of which are members of Circular Philadelphia. So Circular Philadelphia is a nonprofit organization based here in the city of Philadelphia, but we're excited for this opportunity with PASA because we definitely look regionally and all throughout the state of Pennsylvania as well. And what we're doing is bringing together businesses, individuals who are consumers or advocates, government organizations, government officials, nonprofits, academics, all to drive and build a circular economy here in the city of Philadelphia. And if you don't know what a circular economy is, I am going to get to that in a second. But again, thank you guys so much for having us and for being here to hear our story about, our first really big policy win. I'm the director of policy and engagement here at Circular Philadelphia. So this is kind of in my wheelhouse, and I'm excited to bring this roadshow of sorts of people. We've done these presentations a few times, and you're going to hear from some great speakers today. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Circular Philadelphia. And if you know Philadelphia, you know that that's Logan Circle, and we're going to make Philadelphia all circular. And one better place to start than a great landmark in the city. So before we get into what circularity is or what we've done, we just like to take people on a tour because a lot of building the circular economy is going to be built on kind of a perspective shift, a mindset change. So just want to imagine a Philadelphia, or even where you're from, whatever town or city you're calling in from in Pennsylvania or the region. So imagine a place where instead of just throwing away these very valuable raw materials like paper, cardboard, plastic, or glass, we are recycling them locally into materials that we can use to really drive a thriving manufacturing sector. Imagine a place where secondhand doesn't mean second rate, where we can have goods that are in a continuous cycle that are going, whether they're through subscription services or even brick and mortar vintage stores or thrift stores, that people see the value in these materials and not just, oh, it's something I have to do to kind of, something that I can afford to get something that's been secondhand. Again, it's not second rate. It's something that is driving a thriving retail sector in the city where you're from. Where for too long, we like to think that the lie of the 20th century was making consumers feel that you're responsible for all the packaging, you're responsible for all the waste, your tax money has to go to manage all these materials. Well, we changed that and actually have the businesses taking the lead to be responsible for the packaging that comes in these materials, and sets up viable systems that can allow you to reuse. And finally, where all together we come in, we circle up, and we do no longer accept this non-sustainable kind of inequitable economy that has really been created, and we create a more resilient and a more circular one. That's the promise of the circular economy, and that's what Circular Philadelphia is trying to do. So again, what is the circular economy if you're not familiar with it? So what we like to kind of define what, created 20th century industrialization, which I'm going to admit has brought us some amazing things. This Zoom call that we're on, the technology that we're using to do that, right? Indoor plumbing, heating, cooling, having vegetables and fruit that you can get from all over the world whenever you want, right? There are some perks to the system, but we've created a system that we like to call the take, make, and trash. We take things out of the ground by extraction, we make something, and then crazily enough, we throw it in a landfill or burn it in an incinerator, and we lose that resource. We have a finite amount of resources on this planet. And if we want to continue this pretty sweet lifestyle that we have while not destroying the planet in the meantime, we have to change our perspective. We have to change thinking. We have to change these systems. And that's what we're trying to do through the circular economy. We are trying to reimagine the economy as a loop where when there's raw materials that are taken out of the ground, they could be manufactured into something with plans for how they can be reconstituted and recollected in the future, but then put into a system where they're used as long as possible, where we're really employing reuse and repair. And that's part of the economic model that then once that material has kind of reached the end of its lifespan and that lifespan is really understood, we can recollect it, recover those materials, and put it back into the system. So we're creating all of these different circles in all of these different industries throughout all of these different regions of the world that are working in tandem to kind of keep us thriving on this planet, again, while not destroying it in the meantime. So that sounds great, right? This is a utopian vision that I just gave to everybody. Wouldn't that be great if we did that? Well, why now? Why do we want this to happen, right? Aside from the pandemic that has really opened up a lot of issues about our supply chains, how we consume, showed us a lot of different things and revealed a lot. There's also the stat by 2050, 2/3 of us are going to live in cities. We're going to consume 75% of the world's natural resources. We're going to produce 50% of the global waste and 60% of greenhouse gas emissions. There's going to be a huge impact by this kind of urbanization that's already happening, but there could be huge opportunities if we do it right. And again, we change our way of thinking. So, okay, we're going to change our thinking. This is the time to do it. We have to do it. But how are we doing it? Well, at Circular Philadelphia, we are driving this thriving economy, both in Philadelphia and our region beyond, through a few things. And we like to call this kind of our arc of change. The first is starting with policy advocacy. What policies are in place that are holding back the circular economy? Or what could be put in place to help improve it, right? We even like to say we're not trying to give even circular economy businesses more of a leg up or a kind of unfair advantage. We're just trying to level the playing field with how business is being done now, because a lot of these unsustainable businesses are not experiencing the true cost of their activities on this planet. And we're trying to advocate for policies that level that playing field. Once we have the right policies in place, we do education and outreach. So how do we make sure that enough people that need to know about how they can capitalize on these policy improvements, find opportunity in them, know about it, and we have that outreach. Once we have enough people knowing about the opportunities, how do we move towards market transformation? How do we get it to tip so the ways that we do circular businesses are just the norm and no longer the exception to the rule? And finally, it all has to be done through collaboration. And again, you're going to see a lot of great people on this call going to that collaboration. And just to give you a little sneak peek of what we're going to be talking about, as Sarah talked about, we did a policy change to allow reusable containers to be used by restaurants for to-go food and grocery stores as well. Anybody preparing food for takeout. As you'll learn about, this was not the case when some of these businesses in Philly started to try to do this. The policy needed to be changed. We were able to work with our partners to be able to do that. Now that that policy has changed and you have this opportunity to use reusable containers in Philadelphia, we want to do education and outreach. We want people to know about it. So more businesses start to adopt these practices that then leads to that market transformation. So in 5 years, you come to Philadelphia, you get some food at a restaurant, you get it to go. There's a whole system set up for you to take it in a reusable container and then get it back into the cycle. And again, you're going to hear from some great people on how we're doing that. So before we get into how we're doing it, again, economics are important. I'm sure there's some small business owners on here, and yes, we all want to, corporations are doing the ESG thing of, social good and better governance, the triple bottom line. These are all great things, right? Being able to really understand the impact that you're having on the planet as a business. But when you're running a business and you have certain amounts of dollars and cents, you need the numbers to work. It has to make economic sense too. So just to walk you through our main sectors that we work in. So we work in textiles, and these are all numbers from the MacArthur Foundation, which is a think tank that does a lot for the circular economy. It's thought that if you move or research to a circular textile industry, you can have 6 times the amount of jobs. So in Philadelphia, there's about 6,000 jobs in retail for textiles. Imagine if we had 36,000 jobs in Philadelphia, a place that has a high poverty rate that needs jobs, by moving to a circular textile industry. For food systems, there's about a $5.9 trillion food system globally right now. The MacArthur Foundation has extrapolated that by moving to a circular food system, all right, reducing our food waste while increasing how many people you can feed, you can add $2.7 trillion in consumer benefits, which I'm going to get back to in a second and talk about one concrete example. And then finally, with buildings, we also work in the built environment. We work a lot with contractors, construction. If you're moving to more circular business practices on how you're creating the goods to build and also how you build, you can save 25% on your building materials. That's huge in a city like Philadelphia that needs to redevelop, but needs to do it in an equitable way so everybody has access into the wealth that comes with buildings. So these are the numbers that we start to throw out there. Again, this is kind of we can keep this economy going, we can thrive, but we can also change it so we're not causing the problems that we're causing on this planet. One thing we keep saying to everybody, just to kind of, throughout Philadelphia, again, a mind shift is a change. In Philadelphia, we're spending $45 million a year on our waste management budget. That's just to throw things away or get them recycled, right? That's money that's going to like waste management, and whomever has the contract, the incinerators as well, like Covanta. Imagine if we were able to work with the city and shift $5 million of that money into circular businesses, right? They're reducing waste, they're meeting the goals that you need for sanitation, but they're doing it in a more sustainable, circular way. This is the kind of stuff that we're trying to preach for our members. And again, this kind of sea change on thinking. But when it comes to what we're talking about today on the benefit of reusable containers, you can get a reusable container that can be used 1,000 times, and it's going to cost you $5. Now, there is an upfront cost to that. If you're going and you're going to buy a lot of containers that you're going to need for your farmer's market or restaurant or whatever it may be, that's a pretty big upfront investment. We understand that. It's a lot different from, 29 cents a unit for something that's made out of styrofoam. But those things add up. So the same number of single-use plastic containers, right? Anything that's using single-use plastic is about $250. So $5 to $250 is an incredible delta, right? It's a huge money saver. It's going to strengthen your business. And I saw restaurants in my own neighborhood in Fishtown, where I live, that had to raise their prices during the pandemic because so many people were using these takeout containers and it was costing them money. Imagine if there was a better, more circular business plan to do that. It can save on the 14.5 million tons of plastic packaging we're producing in the US, as we did in 2020, because 14% of that was actually recycled, right? It's not being recycled. We need better plans, and reusables are where we really think we can make a big, big change in the market. So that's what we're doing in Circular Philadelphia. We always say, will you join us? I could throw a link in the chat later about our membership button, but yeah, this is really driven by the members. This is for the members. We also have members that are both businesses, institutions, and individuals who want to see this, which I think makes us pretty unique. And again, puts us in good company with PASA, that does a very similar thing to see a more sustainable agriculture industry in Pennsylvania. And we're trying to get a more circular Philadelphia here as well. So really happy to be here. Thank you, PASA. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. We have with us, as Sarah said, it's exciting to have someone from government. As we said, we're joking around on the prep call for this. This is not the big bad bureaucracy of Philadelphia. This was a collaborator that saw a problem as well. And as Sarah said, and thanks for the compliment, helped us work to change this in record time because they saw the need, they believe in it, and they wanted to see this change. So we have with us today the Acting Director of Environmental Health Services at the Philadelphia Health Department, Dawn Kiswetter, who's going to walk us through why the policy was shifted and some other aspects of it. And one thing I will say before Dawn takes over, Maeve is going to put, and PASA is going to put into the chat Dawn's not going to go through every nitty gritty thing of like the FDA rules and the Pennsylvania Department of Ag rules, and all the best practices. We have all those guides on our website. So the link is in the chat. There's a sidebar that has a quick start guide, a presentation about the different rules, a recorded webinar that really gets into the nitty gritty of this. But Dawn's going to walk us through the kind of the high level change and how it all happened. Dawn?
Hi, everybody. How are you today? My name is Dawn Kieswetter, and I am Acting Director for Environmental Health Services. And I have actually been with the department for 20 years now in environmental health services. Now, prior to us working with Circular and working with the food establishments, all existing food establishments were not able to utilize reusable containers without submitting an application first. It was something that you would need to submit. It would be called a variance form, and you need to submit it to Environmental Health Services, which is my division. And with that paperwork, we would review your request, come out, conduct an inspection, and see if you had everything in place to be able to utilize reusable containers. Our main concern with reusable containers is the sanitization process, right? And having a process in place. Once the FDA had that this was, and I won't go into the code number, but basically they said that as long as a proper protocol was in place and a proper procedure for sanitization, that this could be used. And so what the department did and what we recognized was that instead of making people submit this variance, which cost $255, an additional cost, and was just kind of a bureaucratic paperwork step, essentially, we would go ahead and provide guidelines to say how you could utilize this. And if you're a new establishment, you could check off on our plan review application that you would be using reusable containers. But if you're an existing establishment, you don't need to do anything. Essentially, you would be able to use these reusable containers, but during your inspection, the inspector would make sure that you were that you had the proper durable container, that when customers return it, they don't have a lot of debris on it, and that the establishment themselves would store these things properly, would wash, rinse, and sanitize them, air dry them, and then also store them, invert it, or store them so that they would not get contaminated, right, properly, and store them dry so that bacteria or other things, mold, wouldn't grow in these containers. And that's kind of where we're at right now. That's our biggest concern. And I think that a lot of this has really, we're environmental health, so we want to prevent any kind of disuse and extra trash and everything in our city. Obviously, trash is a big concern for us, especially when it comes to our vector control and rats and mice and other things that we see in establishments. So this is a good way to eliminate this extra trash. And we were all behind kind of implementing this and doing away with this existing paperwork and extra step to be able to make sure that you could do it safely. We also took the step, and Circular Philly helped us with this, developing training materials so that all of our staff would be trained, so that if they were to come across this during an inspection, they would know how to treat this, because obviously this was something different than our existing process. And I think I covered most of it, Nick. Did I miss anything?
So just if you want to comment on this slide that we had talked about before about like COVID concern, I know that was a big thing in COVID. I remember my own like local food co-op was like not using reusable bags anymore because everyone just didn't know. They were freaked out about COVID. But then a bunch of scientists came out and, you know, again, for just not even COVID, but other public health, if you want to maybe comment on this about the safety.
Oh, yes. Yep. So essentially, they did comment and say that during the pandemic, it triggered a discussion of how to ensure the safety of these reusable systems. So all of these scientists came out and basically endorsed using these types of reusable systems. And essentially, it's a safe container. It's made of durable materials that could be washed, rinsed, and sanitized and reused. That was the main concern. And I think, Nick, that this was a lot of this, our concerns too, were propelled by the fact that during COVID, there was this uptake of so many people eating takeout. Remember, for a period of time, at least the restaurants in Philadelphia, you couldn't eat in during the height of the pandemic. So a lot of this waste, this was kind of propelled by this fact that we had this maybe 30 or 40% more containers and waste in our trash cans in Philadelphia. And so based on this and the FDA, there was a model food code regulation also that we cite, and I think is in the chat, that this was determined to be safe.
Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, and that's a great kind of segue into our next speaker. So thank you so much for that. And again, why it was so great to have the health department here, this whole relationship that we have with them, but also to speak, is that to show, again, this is collaboration. It's not, city wagging its face, it's us working together, understand this, that the city recognizes this. This is a huge problem in our waste management systems. Trash was overflowing during the pandemic with everyone home, and the fact that we work together to make that change. So thank you so much, Dawn. Really appreciate it. I do want to just say one other thing when you said about we did basically an infomercial for training for all they call them sanitarians, the people that inspect these, and it was Circular Philadelphia and Ecosystem. So you're going to hear from later. So Elisa and I were put on our best, late night infomercial voices and did a great training video for for your staff. So thank you for that.
My apologies, Lisa. I didn't mean to cut you out of it.
No, not at all. It's a lot to remember and all these things. So, with that, we're going to turn it over to a restaurant that saw that there was this issue and took it upon themselves. Again, you don't always have to do that. People are buying your food, takeouts, brisk business, but they saw this is a major problem. Our patrons our customers are worrying about this too, and we're going to do something about it. So we are going to hear from Mary Ann Kelly of Tiffin Food Group. They have 9 restaurants in the greater Philadelphia area, many within the city itself. And they made a big switch into reusable containers, and Mary Ann's going to talk to us about what they did. Mary Ann, you're still muted. Just tell me when you want to advance slides.
There we go. So I'm Mary Ann Kelly. I'm with Tiffin Indian Cuisine, and what happened during the pandemic really brought things to a head for us. However, our journey into the reusable container space did not happen just last year. It actually happened several years ago. I have a photo back from 2017, I think it was, with our leader, the owner of all of the Tiffin restaurants, Munish Narula, and we were doing package investigations then. We had had calls from many of our customers through the years about the sustainability of our packaging, obviously, because we do a heavy amount of carry out and delivery. Our food is very hot and it needs to go into packaging that's secure, that holds the food, that doesn't leak, that keeps it hot, because those are all things that make for a quality experience when you're getting food taken out. But we also knew that this packaging was contributing to a tremendous amount of waste. And then it just exploded when the pandemic happened. And that's when these beautiful little containers came into our lives. It's like the universe opened up and brought this opportunity to our doorstep. We had been looking for sustainable packaging for many years, but could not find it because nothing could hold up to our food. It would leak. It would, we do have a lot of oil in our food, and so that would leak through the container. It didn't keep anything hot. And people can be as sustainable as they want to be, but when their food arrives cold, they don't like that. So we were trying to meet all of these different things. These containers that you see on your screen, they were great. But as I said, our food is very, very hot when it's coming off the screen, off the stove. And putting it into those other containers, they just collapsed. So by using these containers, we meet all of our objectives. Oh, there's the photo I'm talking about. That's from back in 2017. That's Munish Narula. He's the owner of all the Tiffin locations. And we were looking at packaging way back then for this. And then we realized that we had to do something about it. We couldn't just talk about it anymore. We had to do something about it. And that's when these beautiful containers came into our lives. So it was about January of last year, 2021, and Munish called me and said, I found it. I found the containers that we've been looking for. And things just happened, like it all fell into place after that point. We found the containers. We got a good line on sourcing them. We decided which kinds of containers we needed for the products that we have. We had to develop integration into our point of sale system. We have online ordering, and we had to be able to develop a tracking system so that our customers could request the containers if they wanted them. You are not forced to get these containers. It's a choice. So you can choose reusable or disposable containers in the checkout process. We're only offering these online because we do need to have a tracking system in place. We have invested a considerable amount of money into these containers, so we want to make sure that we get them back. And whenever you're ordering online, we have the ordering information, who has taken out the containers, and conversely, who has brought the containers back. So this was part of the process that we went through to get this into our operations. Finding them, integrating them into our system, having a way for customers to easily get the containers and to easily return the containers, and also a process that our staff could work with it easily too. Not sure how many of you have ever worked in a restaurant, but you know how busy it is. And things are active, going on every day, especially during the pandemic when carry out and delivery sales skyrocketed because all of our dining rooms were closed. And so we needed to have this to be easy on our staff as well as easy to use for our customers as well. So that's all went into the thought process. And now customers have really gotten involved with this. Everybody had a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, us included, on how to properly deal with these containers from a process management perspective and also from a health department inspection perspective, because we knew that we had regulations to meet. We were really grateful to be a part of the change in the health department code. And if it hadn't been for Circular Philadelphia and all of the work that Nick did with us and the work from the health department to make a change in this regulation, this is now something that all restaurants have the ability to do. Whenever we talk about it, we want to make sure that other businesses, especially other restaurants, know that this isn't just about doing good, but it's also good for business. That's the bottom line. This is a great tool to enhance your business. It makes you more sustainable. And it's also something that customers can look at and say, hey, I have the opportunity to get reusable packaging at Tiffin. I'm going to go there, or at whatever restaurant you may be talking about. For us as restaurants, these containers are easy to source. They come in many different sizes. Right now, we have 4 different sizes that handle different items that we have on our menu. They're easy to maintain because they're easy to wash. We're very, very serious about the cleanliness and the overall durability of these containers. And so we do keep a very close eye on that. But also lower long-term costs. Yes, it is an investment going into it at the beginning. To date, we have invested $35,000 to $40,000 in the containers, in the process, in our online system, in training our employees. So it's been a considerable investment, but it's worth every single dollar from what we've gotten out of it. So we want other businesses to know that this is going to greatly benefit your bottom line. And it also eases the burden on landfills, because we did an updated estimate maybe a few weeks ago and have determined that in the last 18 months that this project has been up and running at Tiffin, we've probably diverted about 250,000 containers from the waste stream, because our customers are really into this project. They love having the reusable containers. They come to us again and again because we're offering this. And one of the questions we get most frequently is, but how do you know that they're going to come back? What incentive are you offering your customers to participate in this program? And the answer is, we're not providing any incentive other than what the rewards of doing good for your planet. Right now, the people who are participating, which I think we've estimated is about maybe 20 to 25% of our customers, of our orders, are using reusable containers, and they are serious about it. And so they order them, they return them, and the process has been working really, really flawlessly. You can see on your screen that we have introduced certain branding materials for our customers so they know what to do with the containers, and then also guidelines in our restaurants for the proper care and handling of the containers as well. So we really tried to do a circular approach in our own business for how to handle these containers properly, because we're very serious about it, and these containers will be a permanent part of our business.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for telling everybody here about your journey, how this all started. And again, yeah, I always think back to that fateful day, and I think it was April of 2021 when you called me and said the health department shut us down. Like, this is a problem. What do we do? And then it led us on this big journey to, and then the success that you all have had. Again, 250,000 containers is huge. So
it was a collaborative effort, and everybody's going to benefit because of it.
Exactly. That's what we're here to do. So thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to turn it over to another use case and example. Again, so you heard from a restaurant that did this, but also they were in good company because they weren't the only ones with thinking through this as well. Weaver's Way, a known, very called stalwart co-op, food co-op here in the city of Philadelphia, was also working on similar programs on the grocery side of prepared food on how to do this in that use case. So I'm going to turn it over to Norman Weiss from Weaver's Way, who was a big part and integral in getting that program implemented, who works on the purchasing there, and also Elisa Shagaratsky of Ecosystems. Ecosystems is a consultancy and a business here in the city of Philadelphia, and really a community of bringing a bunch of people together to really understand the benefits of reusable containers through many different use cases, and has done some really, really remarkable work with Weaver's Way as well to kind of get their program up and running and off the ground. So I'm going to turn it over to Norman and Elisa to walk you through the Weaver's Way container refund program. And just let me know, guys, when you want me to advance slides.
So I'll tell you a little bit about Weaver's Way. Weaver's Way is a food co-op that started, incorporated in 1974, had first stores in Mount Airy, and eventually opened a second store in the Chestnut Hill neighborhood of Philadelphia. A few years ago, we opened a third store in the borough of Ambler. That's our largest store. And part of the reason we're part of PASA is that we also have two urban farms. One is at the Saul Agricultural High School, and the other is Aubrey Arboretum. And in our, part of our mission as a food co-op is to keep the environment clean, keep it restored and not harm it. And as a grocery store, we use hundreds of thousands of containers and bags. And, most of them say they're recyclable, but we all know, and as Nick showed, only 14% get recycled. I was actually surprised it was that high. And Elisa, had this idea of trying to use a refillable container. Similar to what Marianne and Tiffin talked about, I felt like we had a little research and development department here in my office. We were like buying containers, testing them, seeing if they could go through a dishwasher, seeing if they leaked, see if they were too heavy, seeing if they would break, et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, we landed on the exact same containers that Tiffin did. Really, it seems like they're the only one on the market right now. And Ecosystems designed the program. And we're not like in the hundreds of thousands like Tiffin. I think we sort of launched in the spring of 2021. And I think our most recent totals, the number of items sold in the plastic containers is about 8,500, and the number returned is about 5,700. So that's like a 67% return rate. We also have a couple of vendors. You can see Wholesome Dairy. They will take back their glass containers. So we also have that going on. And retail is, well, I should say they're like most grocery stores, we have a number of departments, right? We have grocery, we have produce, we have deli, we have meat, we have prepared foods, we have a bulk department. And each department, is a little different in the products they offer and how they offer them, how they pack them. But one thing that's common for all grocery stores selling food in packages, as soon as you put food in a package, a whole set of FDA rules, labeling rules kick in. You have to have things like, the name of the product, the pack date, the ingredients, allergen information, the net weight, the name of your business, and then if it's, I said the net weight. So that makes it harder than what a restaurant would do, because restaurants are not subject to that requirement. So what that means, it has to go through our scale system. And the big issue we had with attaching a label to one of these containers is that how do you get them off? Because the whole scale system is predicated on an adhesive label. The scales actually peel the backing off, because typically you're applying it to a disposable single-use plastic container. So nobody cares what happens to the label, really, because nobody really cares that much what happens to the container itself. So anyway, this was another little research and development project. And we found out that there are no labels that could dissolve in the dishwasher that could go through the scale. We actually had a few that sort of printed, but they didn't print with enough contrast for our scanners to scan. So you see the barcode up there? That's the big deal. So what Alicia eventually came up with, we print the labels with the backing still on them, and we attach them to the container with a rubber band. It's kind of inelegant, but this is where we are at this point in the development of the industry. Ideally, some manufacturer will see this as a market opportunity and come up with a better system. But so far, this is what we have. We also use glass containers, by the way. In addition to the plastic ones, we use glass containers for soup and cut fruit and stuff like that. And then there, similar to what Tiffin went through, there's a whole process that's involved. It involves the POS system, it involves staff training, it involves collection, it involves getting through the dishwasher, et cetera, et cetera. So Echo, helped us through all that. We figured out, what containers we can use to collect and store the containers and transport them, because our best dishwasher is actually in our Ambler store. So we collect the containers from our Mound area and Chestnut Hill store, take them to Ambler, run them through the dishwasher, do the whole drying upside down process, that whole thing like Dawn talked about. It's a whole process. So Ecosystems helped us, get all that set up. So that's sort of how that works. That's the current numbers. And you can see we're doing soups. That's the most popular thing. Cut fruit in season. We have bulk grab and grow stuff like raisins and peanuts and peanut butter. We have prep food items like sesame noodle salad and a few other salads. Our deli is doing shredded cheeses and olives. And our produce department is doing stuff like green beans and Brussels sprouts, baby spinach, microgreens. So each has a different container. I mean, I think we're at 4, similar to Tiffin said they had 4. I think we're at 4 or 5 if you include the glass. So with the POS system, you know, because a lot of these items are weighed, they have a tear that goes into the POS system, which goes into the scale system. So that involves an IT department. I'm sure Tiffin's IT department was also very involved with their, you know, back end setup. We charge the customer a deposit like Tiffin. They get it refunded when they return it. So that's pretty much the program in a nutshell, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Norm. And walking through exactly how Tiffin's doing that, or Weaver's Way is doing this, and all the nuts and bolts and logistics. Again, different use case than what Tiffin's doing in a restaurant. Other things to have to consider, especially as especially the net weights. You know, they're not selling food by the weight. So a lot of interesting things that need to be considered through that. And we also, I guess we said, have Elisa here from Ecosystems, who is able to answer any questions that we have. So I think this is a good time to turn it back over to Sarah. I see that there's some Q&A in there, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. As I imagine, this presentation can be made available to everybody after, and you'll get the recording of this webinar, so you'll see all the things that we went through. But I'd love to open this up for some audience conversation to really start to understand how this could fit into your business.
Thank you all. That was just great. Yeah, we've got some good questions and we've got a little bit of time to go through them. So I'm just going to try to direct them to the panelists that makes most sense. And we'll do our best here. So Megan and Laura both had a similar question, which I think has occurred to many of us, which is, are there grants and other means of support for others who want to jump into this that would take care of some of the upfront costs? I think you mentioned the supplies themselves, but also some of the infrastructure and the changes in business handling that you've had to do. And that could be for any of you, really.
From Tiffin's perspective, we fronted those costs. That was part of our investment in our restaurants. We have taken a basic look at grants, but as a for-profit business, not as many grants are available to us, or any grants are available to us. But I believe that there are some available. Nick can talk about that more fluently about what is available. But one of the things that we always remind businesses to remember is, yes, there may be a higher upfront cost, but you'll realize savings over time, because once these containers are used roughly 20 to 25 times, you've made your money back, and then you are saving after that because it reduces the number of single-use plastic containers that you have to purchase.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I can answer that as well. Elisa here. So there are a number of grants in Pennsylvania. Actually, businesses are eligible for something called a business advantage grant, and I think it's $9,400 that any business that's doing anything dealing with source reduction can apply for. So source reduction is when we're actually trying to actively reduce the amount of waste being generated. So if you can come up, indicate a plan in the grant process and show how you're doing this, then you can be eligible for getting that money. Also, the city of Philadelphia, zero waste, the Office of Sustainability, excuse me, they did put out like a year ago a grant for a zero waste R&D. So anybody who's trying to develop a program, it's not a huge chunk of cash, but it is something that can start the process moving along. And also the EPA does have grants, but unfortunately, the last time I looked, they're not in our zone yet, but they're supposed to be trickling down. So hopefully, a lot of people who are doing this kind of work And there are actually R&D grants, and this could kind of fit into that as well, even beyond the business advantage grant. So there's tax rebates, right, and things of that nature. So I think that this is something that can really help businesses along the way, because it is certainly an upfront investment, but also when we're talking about it, it's not just dollars and cents. It does make money on the larger scale regarding our impact, right? Like we have to think about not only how much money our businesses are saving, but the reality of what we're generating in the world, where our garbage is going, and to really have a reckoning with that is super important. So businesses who do that, they step up, and us coming together collectively also has the ability for us to join forces, get better buying power and things of that nature, even on reuse containers.
And just one last thought on that is, and Elisa just said, and again, a lot of what Elisa's businesses is working with other businesses, is that there's economies of scale here. So, the hope is that there are, a sector of market entrepreneurs that can come together to kind of alleviate the burden of those upfront costs for those individual businesses by collectively doing that, whether through entrepreneurism or through some other kinds of social means. So definitely trying to look into that as a future possibility. Just like a restaurant, when they first start business, they're not going to make their own, single-use containers, right? They go to a distributor for those single-use containers. There could be a world where an entrepreneur comes along that you just get your reusable containers and get them cleaned and have the whole system done by this other company.
Thank you, guys. Lisa, I want to go back to you because we really didn't give you time to explain what your role is. Maybe very briefly, you can tell us what ECHO's role was, because I think people will be looking for a service like this.
Okay, so ECHO is a third-party provider. And we actually just went out for nonprofit status. We're currently an S corporation. We work with restaurants, event spaces, and Weaver's Way is our first grocery store pilot, which is really exciting because grocery stores make an immense amount of garbage with their grab and go and their prep foods. And also the complexity of the grocery store is a lot different than a restaurant. Like Norman said, you have departments, you have a lot of different access points. So with that brings a whole new set of complications and also opportunities. So it's been really great working with Weaver's Way. And we have a few new other partners recently that we're really excited to work with. And this is really in the innovation space. We're innovating new models. And our vision at Ecosystems is to, we are the handlers. We're the ones who will come and will pick up your dirty stuff and will sanitize it in a wash site that's certified and clean. And we are also members for the Conference of Food Safety. We're really trying to pay attention to the larger movements and how people are doing this properly, because we really want to get it right. So that's who we are in a nutshell.
Thank you. That's exciting. This really is amazing that it's only happening in 2022, but it's heartening to see this happening.
It's happened before, right? But then it kind of disappeared because, right, like Nick, Nick talks about this a lot, and anyone who's thinking about circularity thinks about the time of the milkman and how you used to get it delivered to your door. And I think that there are a lot of people thinking about this in the United States. There's like 300 businesses that are in this network called the National Reuse Network. And all of these people are people doing reuse at their school, people doing reuse in their communities. It's really happening. So it's just very exciting.
That's great to hear. So we have another question from Laura. Basically, do these containers need to be washed any differently than the regular permanent dishes used for in-house dining? Maybe that's a question for Marianne.
We do take an additional step. As you know, when you go into a restaurant and you're sitting down to eat, you're eating on a dish and using cutlery and glasses that many, many other people have used. All restaurants have a certified dishwashing machine that uses, it has to meet regulations for temperature and chemical component and sanitizer. And so we put all of our containers through that dish machine, but we take an additional step beforehand. in making sure that the containers have been all cleaned out. Not all of our customers return the containers, spotlessly clean. Many of them do run it through their own dishwasher before they return. Some do not. But we go through a cleaning and we put them through sanitizer first, and then we put them into our dish machine. So they are getting a good measure of sanitizing when they do that. But all dishes and implements that you use in a restaurant, they're going through a similar process.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that.
Please.
They definitely should, they need to be sanitized, as Marianne just said. But the other part of this is they should be returned also, as Marianne said, like rinsed or washed or whatever, after they are cleaned, after they are either put through the dish machine with sanitizer or wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dried. Then they do need to be stored properly. That's a big
Correct.
part of it. So after, if you do wash, rinse, and sanitize and air dry them, you should make sure that they're totally dry. They should be stored inverted in clean plastic containers. And if you're going to use bins that are similar, if you're collecting the dirty ones in a bin and the clean ones in a bin, then you'd want to have it marked like clean and dirty to make sure that there wasn't any confusion that the clean ones actually went through the sanitization process.
And also, can I add to that? We also recommend that those containers look completely different by site. So you don't want to have the same type of container that you're using to store a clean one, because it's too easy to be confused. People don't always read signs. So you want these containers to really look different.
All good points. Thank you. So we have a question from Leslie, who asks, would you be, and I think this is for the whole group, would you be interested, or would it be possible to use hemp-based products if they were available instead of plastic?
It depends on the food. At Tiffin, we have tried hemp-based products, hemp, paper, other plant-based materials. And while some of them may hold up, there are other problems. They're not sealed properly. They leak. The food gets cold. So now, granted, we are looking at other types of packaging material for certain things that we don't have that much of a concern about, something that isn't generally liquid. If you know anything about Indian food, you know that it is, that we make a lot of curries, so there's a lot of sauce involved. You have to have a sealed container, because it's when it's going out the door for carry out and delivery, it needs to stay secure until it reaches the customer's home. But there's other things that we offer that don't need to go into a plastic container. Our big move right now, because we are still using styrofoam containers for certain items, is eliminating those containers altogether. Finding an acceptable substitute that is not overwhelmingly expensive is difficult. And that's why we haven't made the full switch as of yet, because we do have to be mindful of the cost. They are in some cases prohibitively expensive. And in others, what we've run into over the past year is a supply issue, where we could get some containers, but we wouldn't have enough to meet our supply. So because of those problems, we haven't made the full switch yet. But if you're working with a certain type of restaurant where you can use hemp containers, then absolutely. In our business, we cannot.
And to note that, at least just put that in the chat about, like, with some hemp containers and, what's considered, people would call compostable, still have linings in them. So you have to watch that. But from the FDA code, they do allow for fiber-based, like wood or hemp products as reusables. So.
We just have a little time left, maybe one or two more questions. We have another, is it possible to get the contact information for the presenters if we want to reach out individually? Nick, I would, I guess, ask you if that's something that PASA could help with through email. You will be getting a recording, everyone who is listening or signed up for the session of today, but is it possible to reach out to you guys individually?
Yeah, I think everybody's shaking their heads there, and everybody, that sounds great. And for me, personally from Circular Philadelphia, yes, an emphatic yes. Like we want to, if you heard something that sparked your mind in this, that you're in the Philadelphia area, even beyond, and there's collaboration or just something to run past, like we said, there's a lot of innovation that's possible in this space, and we want all the good ideas on the table of how this can progress. To make reusables just the norm rather than the exception. So yes, please get in touch.
Great, thank you all. So we have a comment here that I appreciate your comment, Mary Ann, because it demonstrates that this is a journey and it can take some trial and error to reach all of our goals. Could each of the businesses comment on what their next goals are in this process?
For Tiffin, our next goal is composting.
For us, it's just to get it more widely adopted, more shoppers taking advantage of more streamlined systems, more staff training, more sort of in-house logistics, and then expand the number of products.
And I guess for us at Ecosystems, we want to get away from using plastic at all, because plastic is still plastic, even when you're reusing it. So that's a limitation that we currently have, something that we would like to work out with the health department. Because for us, for Ecosystems, as we're servicing a wider range of businesses, we really want to get away from just doing plastic at all, because you can't turn a plastic item into another plastic item. That's what everybody needs to understand. This whole idea of recyclability is kind of a farce. So you would have to downcycle it, the materials that we're currently using. So if we're trying to do something sustainable, let's take it even further. So that's definitely something. Also, just one more thing I want to add in that is that when we get our shipments of all of these containers that we're using, sometimes those come in their own plastic bag. They come with a label, they have a plastic thing on it. So I have been literally collecting all these things that have come, and I have labels that are like a big ball of labels that are just, you wouldn't believe what it looked like. And that stuff is going to be here forever. So that's what we really want to be thinking about, even with these reuse models, that we could probably do this better, more efficiently with with a better quality material. So.
And for circular, yeah, we are looking to continue to, again, like understand like the different innovation in the space, and definitely have our eye towards what do more centralized kind of reuse systems look like. We've had these conversations with Mary Ann often, and it's like, it's going to be a hardship for every individual business to do this on their own. And how do we kind of collectivize that, either through, like I said, like a cooperative program through different businesses, or through an entrepreneurial aspect of this, to see how we can have one entity kind of collecting, washing, and then getting them back out into the restaurants and grocers to alleviate the overhead. Great.
Well, believe it or not, we have come to the end of our hour. That went incredibly quickly, and so much good information. As I mentioned, we'll be sending the recording out. We'll send the contact emails to those who request them. And I had the very same last question that Laura did, which is, how do we replicate and scale up your amazing success here? It clearly took a whole team working together, but is this something that we should be doing statewide? Sounds like a job we just gave ourselves here. Nick, do you want to tell us kind of where next and what level you're working to make this happen everywhere?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, if we look at it as like, there's circles in circular economy, there's many different ones, and we try not to put it in a box. There's either all little ones that have to be very little and localized, or they have to be these big ones that are national or international. There are going to be many different sizes of circles that are going to happen. And, we're kind of creating one in Philadelphia, and even within certain restaurant chain like Tiffin has its circle. How do we got to widen that circle? Grocery chain like Weaver's Way has 3 locations. They're trying to advance the circle. How do we start to bring more businesses in and put them on? And how does that get bigger and bigger? How does it replicate in other regions of Pennsylvania, in other sectors? You heard from a grocer and a restaurant, but I'm sure from PASA, there's farmers markets people on here, CSA, people who might be doing value-added goods within the produce in the box of the CSA. how do we kind of create these replicable models? And that's something that we're definitely looking at. And, as I put our information in the chat for members and people to collaborate, would love to continue to collaborate with PASA to see how this is possible on all these different levels and use cases, and get all these circles kind of connected and linking up, and creating a more circular economy throughout Philly, the state, and our country.
A lot of circles.
A lot of circles.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank our panelists. You guys were great. This is such a good exchange of information. We will do some follow-up. We'll send the recording out along with the, if we can find the link to the Business Advantage grants. And thank you all for being with us. If you wouldn't mind filling out our evaluation, it takes about 30 seconds. We'd so appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. So thank you so much.